There was a group of scientists sent from the Louis Pasteur Institute in Paris, France, in the early 1800s, mid 1800s. And they sent these scientists to South America. Now, the region of the Amazon they were sent to, it actually has a name, and it's called Sumarin, Sumarin. And this region of the Amazon is very thick jungle. And they wanted the scientists from France, in Paris, France, at the Louis Pasteur Institute. They paid them to go across the ocean on the Atlantic on a ship, go to Sumarin, not a joke, remember this, Sumarin area of South America in the Amazon. And they were sent with one goal. You scientists here in France, in Paris, are going to go into the jungles of the Amazon, and you are going to interview with some translators the medicine men and women in South America of all the villages and tribes there that you can find. And you're going to ask them, how do you keep your people alive in the jungle who get bit or stung by venomous, deadly snakes, scorpions, spiders, etc.? So Louis Pasteur Institute sent their scientists to go collect from the people in the woods in the jungle of the Amazon who don't have emergency rooms and don't have hospitals. How do they keep the people alive who get bit by deadly snakes, deadly spiders, deadly scorpions, any venomous creature? So the scientists traveled across the ocean in the 1800s. They land in Sumarin, and then they go walking through the jungles with their translators and tour guides till they get to the villages, and then they interview the healers, the medicine men and women. And as they go from village to village, they all say the same thing over and over and over. Oh, yeah, this tradition of saving people's lives from venomous, deadly creatures here in the jungle has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And they would tell every single scientist in every village, there's just these two parts of two plants out in the forest that we go collect whenever somebody gets bit or stung by these deadly creatures, and we put those two ingredients in water and we boil it. And then we have the people drink it. All right. So they keep hearing this over and over and over. And then they ask these medicine men and women, will you please take us into the forest and show us what parts of these plants you're using? Because they didn't really have names for them. These are just traditions passed down. You go and grab this part of this plant, this part of this plant, boil it, and have the people drink it. It'll save their life. And it does. Well, those scientists at Louis Pasteur's Institute had a vested interest in wanting to find out what are they using out there in the jungles that we could profit off of. All right, so the medicine men and women naively took these men and women out into the forest, and they showed them, you see that tree? We take this bean, and then we take from this one tree, and then we take the bark of this other tree. They peeled off some of the bark, and they hand it to them. We take this bean from this specific tree and this bark from this other tree, and we steep it in tea, hot boiling water, and we have the person drink it, and it saves their life from deadly snakes, scorpions, spiders. So as these men and women from the Louis Pasteur Institute in France are collecting this stuff and putting it in their bags, they get back on a boat and go back to France. And when they get to their laboratory that doesn't exist in Sumarin, South America, when they get back to France, they are commissioned and paid to now break down this bean and this bark and find out what's inside both that might be saving the lives of these people from these venomous creatures. Okay. This has everything to do with tobacco and nicotine, by the way, right now that you're watching worldwide. Okay. So these scientists break down the bean, boil it, smash it, break it down into its little bitty components. They can look at it under a microscope. And they identify there's two molecules that are identical in both. And they decide to name this chemical. Okay. So they find a nutrient in the bean, and they find a nutrient in this bark from another tree that are identical in structure. And they decide to name it. Remember, the people in the jungle don't have a name for it. These people in science wanted to name it. And they named it Laban Coumadin. Sorry. Not Coumadin. They named it coumarin, Coumarin. So coumarin is what they named it. The name of the bean is called a tonka bean. The bark from the tree is what you now know as cinnamon bark. just so you know. So they were taking tonka beans and this bark of the tree, and in it was this compound they named coumarin, Coumarin. All right, now, come early 1900s, these chemists in France isolated this molecule found in both, but they found that in the tonka bean was like 100 times more of this stuff than in the bark called cinnamon. All right, follow me here. The bean had more of this nutrient called coumarin that protected the deadly side effects of venoms than the bark of the tree we call cinnamon. Got it? All right. So now they've isolated this compound. It's found in both. And then they want to commission their chemists now who have isolated the molecule to now figure out how to make a synthetic fake chemical that looks identical almost to this coumarin compound. And I already slipped up here in this interview. They decided to name the new chemical molecule version Coumadin. They just changed the R in coumarin to a D for drug, Coumadin. And now there's millions of people around the world going to CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Walmart, Target, pharmacies to get Coumadin in a little orange bottle that they could take every day to prevent blood clotting. What the scientists at the Louis Pasteur's Institute found out about tonka beans and cinnamon bark is that the majority of the creatures in the area called Coumarin, their venom caused blood clotting to kill its prey and the humans. And this coumarin compound was super effective at preventing blood clots from occurring from venom. Well, when they isolated the coumarin compound and called it Coumadin, they could figure out how much of that to pack into a tablet, capsule, whatever, and then have human beings and animals take it. And they found that it would thin all mammals' blood based on the doses. And some of those doses were deadly. Some of these people would start bleeding out of their nose, ears, mouth, and they would hemorrhage to death because their blood was too thin. So they started figuring out ranges of doses of just this fake blood thinning chemical that almost looks identical to a nutrient in a bean and cinnamon bark that does the same thing in nature. Okay, now, these plants have been doing this for millennia. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, the Louis Pasteur Institute figures out how to synthetically make something similar. All right, if you don't study history, we are all doomed to repeat it. And we're about to repeat it if we allow Big Pharma to do with tobacco what they did with the bean called tonka bean. All right, so Louis Pasteur Institute isolates it. They call it synthetic version. They call it Coumadin. Then it reaches American shores, and in the 1950s, the FDA approves Coumadin as a blood thinner. Okay? And all of you are still aware of what Coumadin is, and most of our senior citizens are taking it every day today. Okay? Coumadin in a prescription form. All right, so in the 1950s, early 1950s is when the FDA approves Coumadin to be a drug prescribed by medical doctors in America. And then all pharmacies in America start carrying it. Do you know what was done in 1953, Laban? If you read my book, you do. What did Big Pharma tell the FDA to do with tonka beans, where they got Coumadin from? They told the FDA to ban all tonka beans from being added to our food supply in America. And on the FDA's website right now still exists this permanent ban since 1953 that American food companies and supplement companies, you can't break down the tonka bean into a supplement or a food item for people to consume. No, that's illegal. You can't do it. Only we can isolate the nutrient, synthetically make a fake version, and then put it in a supplement form or capsule form and call it a drug that now will be paid by your health insurance companies and prescribed by your medical doctor. We're going to ban the tonka bean. Now, notice they didn't ban cinnamon. Why didn't they ban cinnamon? Cinnamon has a lot less coumarin in it than tonka bean does. So the tonka bean was more of a therapeutic drug dose than the cinnamon is. To sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon on your toast is not going to thin your blood or reverse diabetes. But if you ate that whole damn tree, it would. But they're not asking you to do that. Nicotine is in its highest content found in the tobacco plant alone. The second highest is eggplant. The third highest is red tomatoes. Notice, no one's talking about banning eggplants or red tomatoes from your grocery stores. No. 200 countries in lockstep right now in the last 3 years have all started to introduce taxation, regulation, and rules about how tobacco can be purchased, who can sell it, and the nicotine products that can be sold commercially. They want to ban all access from you being able to get it by the year 2030. And if you don't study history, we're all doomed to repeat it. So here we go. You ready, Laban? This is what I haven't talked about a lot in presentations. Okay. Nicotine alone is known to cure over 500 different medical diagnosed diseases. And I have the medical textbooks, and every year it has been published to do so for every one of those conditions. So if you think you know more than I do, you must have read those textbooks plus more. If you're going to complain and write some weird comment to Laban's platform, don't do that until you read that stuff. I've already read it. I've already done shows on it. I've already presented it. Go read it. I've even published it in books. Go read them. Go see them. Go look them up. I have all the references there.